Before we begin, let me ask you something quietly. Have you ever listened to the same English video, the same podcast, or the same conversation more than once, and then stopped yourself, thinking, no, I shouldn't repeat this. I should move on. I should learn something new. If you've ever felt that way, today's episode is especially for you. Hey friends, welcome to Echo Your English. This is not a place where English is rushed. This is a place where English is allowed to settle. Here, you don't have to prove your progress. You don't have to speak before you're ready. You simply listen, and you let your brain do what it already knows how to do. If this kind of calm, natural learning feels right to you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It helps more learners find a gentler path to fluency. Today, we're talking about something that looks ordinary on the surface, but quietly decides whether English stays confusing or becomes natural. Today's episode is about the hidden power of repetition in English learning. For many learners, repetition feels like going backwards. It feels slow. It feels unproductive. We're taught to believe that progress means learning new words every day, new rules every week, new methods all the time. So when we hear the same English again, we feel guilty, we feel lazy, we think we're wasting time. But language doesn't grow through constant novelty. It grows through familiarity. The first time you listen to a piece of English, your mind is usually tense. You're trying to understand every word. You're afraid of missing meaning. Your attention is tight. When you listen again, something changes. The topic is familiar now. The fear reduces slightly. And because that pressure drops, your brain starts noticing things it couldn't notice before. The music of the language, the rhythm, the way sentences naturally connect. This is where repetition begins to show its real power. Repetition is not about memorizing sentences. It's about letting patterns sink in. When you hear the same sentence shapes again and again, they stop feeling like grammar. They start feeling natural. And when something feels natural, you don't need to think about it to use it. Many learners say they understand English, but can't speak. Often this isn't a problem of intelligence or effort. It's a problem of familiarity. Understanding is the first step. Repetition is what turns understanding into instinct. And repetition doesn't need to be loud. You don't need to repeat out loud. You don't need to pause and copy every sentence. Silent repetition still works. Listening while walking, resting, or doing daily tasks still feeds your brain. Patterns are still forming, even when you feel passive. Children learn language this way. They hear the same phrases hundreds of times before speaking confidently. No pressure, no deadlines. Adults are capable of the same learning, but we often interrupt it by demanding fast results. If English feels slow right now, it doesn't mean you're stuck. It often means repetition is working quietly beneath the surface. Growth doesn't always feel exciting. Sometimes it feels invisible, but invisible growth is still growth. On this channel, you'll hear familiar phrases again and again. That's not accidental. That's intentional. This is how English becomes comfortable instead of stressful. Repetition also changes the way your brain feels about English. At the beginning, English can feel sharp and demanding, like something that needs your full attention all the time. But when you hear the same sounds again and again, English slowly loses that edge. It becomes softer. It becomes something your brain recognizes instead of something it needs to fight. This is why repetition is especially powerful for learners who feel anxious or tired. When you're anxious, your brain is in survival mode. It wants safety, not complexity. Repetition provides that safety. Familiar voices, familiar pacing, familiar sentence shapes all tell your brain that nothing dangerous is happening here. And when the brain feels safe, learning becomes possible. You might notice that after listening to the same English content several times, your attention starts to wander a little. You may think this means you're not learning anymore, but often the opposite is true. When attention relaxes, deeper processing begins. Your brain no longer needs to focus hard on meaning, so it starts absorbing pronunciation, stress, and natural flow without effort. This is also why repetition works even when you're not fully focused. You don't need perfect concentration. You don't need silence. Even half listening still leaves an impression. Language doesn't require full control. It requires exposure. Another quiet benefit of repetition is confidence. Not the loud, performative kind, but a calm, inner confidence. The kind where English no longer feels unfamiliar. The kind where silence doesn't feel like failure. The kind where speaking, when it finally happens, feels like a continuation of listening rather than a test. Many learners wait for confidence before they allow themselves to repeat. They think repetition is something you do only at the beginning. But confidence is built through repetition, not before it. Each familiar phrase removes a little fear. Each repeated sound makes English feel a little more like home. If you ever feel bored while repeating, don't judge that feeling too quickly. Boredom often means your brain has moved past basic understanding. It means the content is no longer challenging your survival instincts. And when survival relaxes, learning deepens. This is why returning to the same episodes, the same voices, and the same rhythm is not a mistake. It's a strategy, a very human one. And over time, something gentle happens. English stops being something you try to learn. It becomes something you recognize, something you understand without effort, something you respond to naturally. That's when speaking begins to appear, quietly and without force. What's important to remember is that repetition doesn't follow a schedule you can see. There's no clear line that says, after 5 listens, you will improve. Language doesn't work in straight lines. It works in layers. Each time you hear the same English again, a different layer is touched. Sometimes it's meaning. Sometimes it's sound. Sometimes it's emotion. All of it adds up, even when you can't measure it. This is why comparing yourself to others can be so misleading. Someone else might speak earlier than you, but that doesn't mean their foundation is stronger. Your listening, your repetition, your quiet absorption may be building something deeper. Fluency built on familiarity lasts longer than fluency built on pressure. You might also notice that repetition changes your inner voice. At first, when you think in English, the voice feels stiff, unnatural, maybe even chūj, foreign. But the more you repeat listening, the more that inner voice softens. It starts borrowing rhythm from what you've heard. Sentence shapes appear on their own. You don't force them. They simply arrive. This is one of the clearest signs that repetition is working, even if you're not speaking it. And this is why there's no need to rush yourself into output. Speaking is not the goal you chase. It's the result that appears when listening has done enough work. Repetition prepares the ground. Speaking grows from it naturally. If you ever feel impatient, that's okay. Impatience doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means you care. When that feeling appears, instead of pushing harder, try returning to something familiar, a voice you trust, a pace that feels comfortable. Let repetition calm the impatience instead of fighting it. Over time, English stops feeling like a subject. It starts feeling like a presence, something that sits with you quietly, something that doesn't demand effort, something that doesn't judge your silence. And one day, often when you're not trying, you'll notice words coming out more smoothly, not perfectly, but more easily. And that ease will not come from studying harder. It will come from listening again and again and again. This is the hidden power of repetition. It works when you're calm. It works when you're tired. It works when you feel stuck. It works even when you think nothing is happening. So if all you can do today is listen again, that is enough. That is learning. That is progress. And maybe this is the most important thing to understand about repetition. It teaches patience without asking you to be patient. You don't have to tell yourself to wait. You don't have to convince yourself to trust the process. Repetition builds trust naturally, because every familiar sound tells your brain, you've been here before, you're safe here. That safety changes everything. When English feels safe, you stop bracing yourself. You stop preparing answers in your head. You stop judging every pause. Silence becomes neutral instead of scary. And from that neutral space, language starts to move more freely. You may notice that some expressions begin to feel right before you know why. You hear a sentence and think, yes, that sounds correct, even if you can't explain the grammar. That's repetition at work. Your brain has heard that pattern enough times to recognize it. This is how native-like intuition is built, not through rules, but through exposure. This is also why repeating content from the same source is so powerful. The same voice, the same pacing, the same style creates consistency. Consistency allows your brain to focus on language instead of adjusting to new sounds all the time. Familiar voices become guides. They carry you forward gently. If you ever feel the urge to jump from one resource to another, pause and ask yourself why. Is it curiosity, or is it fear of staying still? There's nothing wrong with exploring, but depth comes from staying. Repetition is staying long enough for language to settle. And settling takes time, not a dramatic amount of time, just honest time. Time spent listening again, time spent returning, time spent allowing English to become part of your mental landscape. You don't need to rush towards speaking. You don't need to push yourself into conversations before you feel ready. If speaking hasn't appeared yet, it's not late. It's preparing. Repetition is quietly doing the work for you. So tonight, or tomorrow, or whenever you listen again, let yourself repeat without guilt. Let familiarity grow. Let English soften around you. That's how fluency really begins. If you've stayed with me until here, thank you for listening. And if this way of learning feels right to you, make sure you subscribe to Echo Your English. We'll keep building your English calmly, naturally, and without pressure. one familiar listen at a time.